Hi, this is Scott Garibay, and today I wanted to talk about Dungeons & Dragons and BOMT, Book of Many Things. So Book of Many Things is a really unusual, really unique D&D canon hardback. And so one of the things that's really interesting is it is one of these continued series of products that are $80 to $100, right? And so you get a traditional D&D canon hardback, but you get another container that is exactly the size of a D&D canon hardback, but it contains 3 separate deck of many things, right? And so, but I wanted to talk today about some material that's within the Book of Many Things, Dungeons & Dragons, the D&D canon hardback section, not the actual physical deck. And that is the Traps chapter. So the Traps chapter is chapter 4. And I read through this chapter, and there's like 4 different traps, and each one has a very lengthy text description, right? And it's like of these specific traps, right? And so I read each one, and I'm like, I still don't understand what the heck this trap does, right? So I read all the text for all the traps, and I swear I couldn't tell you what a single one of the traps does, right? And the reason why I was like, you know what? First of all, traps are really tricky in Dungeons & Dragons. Traps are almost never used by Dungeons & Dragons, done by Dungeon Masters. They're extremely rarely used. And then, I think I know why, right? Text is a horrible delivery system for information about traps. You don't really understand what they do. You don't understand really how they trigger, how they work. And I think what we're really seeing here is things are changing, right? And so we get to a point where we're like, do we need to make a change in how we're delivering information by canon? So right now, there's an extremely strong tradition. The most canon-y canon of Dungeons & Dragons is the D&D canon hardback. And that canon gives us the information we need by specifically text, right? But the reality is each one of these traps, right? Especially after I got done reading all 4 of them, like this, I was like, this is stupid. I do not understand any of these traps. I have a master's degree, right? I've read literally 40 D&D canon hardbacks in 5th edition alone. I've probably read 75 to 100 D&D canon hardbacks in my life. And I'm like, text is just a terrible way to explain a trap. This should be a YouTube video. This should just be a YouTube video. The book should say, here's 4 traps. Go watch the video. Period, done. And I know people's, hair is curling right now. They're like, no, Scott, you can't send people to a YouTube video for D&D canon. And I get it. I understand where you're coming from. But the reality is I read these, right? And they were not poorly written. It's just like traps are so visual. The sequencing is important. The angles are important, right? Like, here's a good example. I don't read board game manuals anymore, right? I watch someone play it, and it's so much clearer, right? I don't watch somebody play. I watch somebody explain how to play it, right? And the reality is, I think traps are just... Text is an incredibly good canon description for monsters, for stat blocks, for lore, for adventure sequencing, but just traps. Traps are just not explained well through text. It is a visual medium, and it should be shown visually, right? And the reality is, I just, after reading a Book of Many Things, great product, 100% in support of it, 5 out of 5 star review, fantastic product. But you know what? I don't ever want another trap explained to me through text. I want to see it. It's just, text is a bad delivery system for explaining traps. So that's my take, right? I know this is, that people are going to push back on this, but I think it's time that we start officially getting D&D canon in many, many vectors, and I think it's time that video becomes an official vector for information specifically for traps, right? And that's just, That's my take. And I do think it's time. I really think it's time. Every single word you just heard is my humble opinion. What's important is when I get to hear your humble opinion. And you get in the comments and send your traffic. Please consider liking and subscribing, and have a wonderful millennium.